Over the past couple recaps, I may have been saying some things about how this seems like a two-horse race, a two-man show. And guess what? Not anymore, because one of these players lost. I'm Quillogic. Let's find out what happened. Nakamura versus Caruana, a huge clash. These two players played in round one of the tournament when Fabiano got the best of Naka. Can Naka get his revenge here? It would be huge for him. It would bring back Caruana from his leading position in second place, and it would bring Nakamura forwards towards the top. We see an open Rui Lopez, where we're going to be following some theory for quite a while here, and it's going to lead to a very interesting middle game position. Essentially, after these trades, we're going to see a very imbalanced game. Caruana has a rook and two pawns against Nakamura's knight and bishop. Fabi is putting his hope on these center pawns, hoping that they will steamroll Nakamura's pieces. Naka, though, is saying, my knight and bishop will outperform your rook because they can harmonize and work together. After this, both sides still need to finish their development. Fabiano now getting ready to make an even bigger pawn wall in the middle. Quite a crazy position. But around here is where Fabi starts to go astray. So you have to be really careful about which pawns you push because they leave weaknesses behind. And we see here that Fabi goes with the wrong pushes. We'll see more in a little bit. But first, I want to ask you, how would you deal with the pressure that Black has on the F-file? Knight h1 is an incredible move. The knight goes back to the corner, but you're defending your bishop. That opens up the possibility for your knight on f3 to move. So you're now attacking e5. Fabi felt obligated to push his e4 pawn forward, but after knight d4, we can see how these pushes have gone wrong for Black. White has this amazing d4 square for their piece, and Fabi's d3 bishop. Yes, it could be good right now, but there's also the chance that with those two pawns there, that bishop can never go to another diagonal, and it could just be left doing nothing. Queen g6, now it's time again. Look for the move for Hikaru. White does not want to tolerate the queen there. The queen is quite strong, so he goes h4, kicks the queen out, and that also enables him to play the move bishop g4, bringing out the bishop. Soon enough, we go into an endgame with these queens traded, but Nakamura is able to simplify this and show a big advantage here because, remember what I was saying before? Fabi's putting all of his hope on those central pawns. Well, without those central pawns, Nakamura has a great position. He just won d5, and the e4 pawn isn't going anywhere. Fabi goes ahead and grabs the h5 pawn, and Nakamura takes the time to start bringing his pieces, unraveling his position. Now goes for some queen side play to make some weaknesses he can attack on that side of the board. But going back a bit, we see Fabi pushing this h-pawn forward, and you might be wondering what he's up to. Well, we'll see soon enough, but Nakamura might have missed a bit of an easier chance, because he could have just picked off this h-pawn immediately with the move bishop e8. If you try to keep it defended with your rook, well then that leaves your rook on f4 short of squares. That might have made things easier, still completely winning for Nakamura, but gave Fabiano another chance to put up some resistance with this cool move h3. And Fabi has some devilish tricks here. If you take it with your pawn, now you're allowing the move rook f3, rook e1, then Fabi has a nice tactic here, rook g3, sack the rook but win the knight back. All of a sudden, Fabi would be the one pressing for an advantage. Going back, if you take with the knight, now Black will trade the rooks. Fabi can start pushing the past e-pawn. You might ask, well, what is Fabi's threat? If you just waste a move with rook c1, Fabi would take, go h2, distract the king away, win your bishop. Fabi would be completely winning. Nakamura, though, not going to fall for any of these tricks. Instead, plays what strong defensive move? Rook a2. The rook comes to the defense of the knight. Now all of those tricks involving taking the knight on f2, they're never going to work. Fabi's best bet was to just try to take here, but he's basically given up on those tricks as Nakamura brings the bishop back around and is able to start bringing all of his pieces out into the game. The king comes up. The bishop goes in the center. Now it's time for the other bishop, the knight. This is all going great for Nakamura, while Fabi can do little more than just move his rooks back and forth. That being said, Fabi now does see a chance. He goes ahead and sacrifices the rook, trying to push this pawn forward, although it is going to be stopped. That being said, after the next couple moves, Fabi finds a really cool idea, the move g5. He is bringing White's king away. If you take, then you're running into rook e5. Black wins back their piece that they are currently down. So after king g3, Fabi has to try to bring the rook into the game. Rook e6. Rook swings over to h6. They go back and forth a little bit. Fabi might have missed up one more chance to put up some more resistance. He could have played this move rook h1. His idea is that he wants to put the rook on f1, and you can never take it unless you want black to get a queen. And after knight g2, there is this hidden resource, the move rook h3, which actually makes things a bit difficult for white because you're aiming for g4, rook f3, and putting the king under a bit of pressure since white's pieces are kind of short of squares here. That being said, this would still be winning for white, just would require white to find some more accurate moves to finish off the game. Instead, the game ended quickly as now Nakamura is able to get a good defensive setup. He brings his rook out, brings the knight into the center. Fabi resigns soon enough. Once the knight goes to f3, everything is defended and secured. Fabi has no more tricks left in the game. Nepomniachtchi versus Ding is what you might call a non-game, meaning that Nepomniachtchi just wanted to draw, secure his lead with white, not take any risks. That's why he picks the Scotch 4 knights. At the very elite level like this, it's not really a dangerous opening, and Ding shows exactly how you can defend against it, and Nepo wasn't really trying for much more anyway. Basically, this setup has all been seen before, even this idea of black castling. If you take this pawn, you are leaving your king in the center, so that's why Nepo decides to castle. As both sides develop, we're going to reach a structure typical for this line. Black's bishop pair basically exactly compensates for the weakened structure, and it is an equal position. Ding isn't going to have any trouble defending this one. Now we reach opposite colored bishops, which just further increases the drawing chances. The draw is all but ensured once these rooks start coming off the board over the next few moves. Finally, with the rooks coming off the board, it is a total dead draw. Rapport and Duda, two players who just lost to Nepo in the last couple rounds, both of them could really use a win to bounce back. Rapport goes to his trademark style of playing very offbeat openings with the move g3. Goes for a kingside fianchetto, definitely not the most popular treatment of this position. The game becomes even more odd when white plays this b3 move, very off the beaten path. White's idea is that the pawn here will prevent any push from black. Black puts the knight on d4, while both sides continue to bring out the rest of their pieces. It's not easy for either side to make progress, but after bishop takes here, how would you take back? Rapport made the very ambitious decision to take back with the pawn. It might not be objectively the best, but it does give him serious chances. By opening up the f-file, it also gives him a plan. So after b5, now how would you follow up on this recapture? Considering that we just opened up the f-file, that implies that we want to play on the king side, where Rapport goes for a kingside pawn storm. When Nepo played Duda, that's how Nepo beat him, with the kingside pawn storm. So Rapport goes with the tried and true method. Duda uses this rook idea, swinging the rook over to defend. Duda doesn't play the defense the most accurately here. Gives up this pawn. How would you continue the attack as white? Bishop h3 is a nice move. You're trading off the bishop that wasn't really doing anything, and you're also making room for the rook to come to g1, threatening mate. Duda decides to give up the knight rather than the bishop. Maybe not the best decision, but he was hoping that by closing down the g-file, he would keep his king safer. But the problem is that instead of using the g-file, Rapport can just switch to the other file. Goes rook g2. This move is a big mistake by Duda. He could stay in the game if he had walked his king over to the queen side, but rook e7 just shuts down any hope of bringing the king over. Now white has a big attack, going to be difficult to stop. Brings the queen over, brings the rook over. This is why Duda's defensive idea wasn't as good, because now the open h-file will be the end of the day for Duda. He tries to push this pawn, desperate defense, not going to work out. After king g1, moving the king back to open up this file, Duda then, for some reason, plays b4, doesn't do anything to help in the defense. After take, can you find the last move that Rapport played to make Duda resign? There are a lot of winning moves here, but a lot of them have this good idea of knight e4. You're trying to bring the knight into the attack, and the point is that black can't take, because now the open f-file will help in this following line, where you start some checks, and then here we see the open f-file. That's why we sacrificed our knight. Now this will be forced mate after a few more checks and mate. Firouzja against Radjabov. Firouzja picks the Italian, Radjabov not repeating the a6 Sicilian that he lost to Fabiano with. Both sides going for mostly normal development. Firouzja chooses to push his queenside pawns forward. This is one of the main approaches white uses in the Italian, just gaining some space on the queen side. After both sides continue to develop, How about you come up with a plan for black? This is a very typical structure where these doubled e pawns do give black an extra option, which is that black can go queen e8, aiming to bring the queen out on this diagonal, and we're going to see black aim for kingside play using this open f file. Very similar to the game we just saw between Rapport and Duda, right? Both sides now going to maneuver a bit. The rook on a2, another idea we've seen before. The rook on a2 offers lateral protection of the f2 pawn. The knight comes to f4. Again, we can see how black's kingside attack, he's trying to develop something there, but it's not going to be easy because white also has a lot of pieces defending on that side of the board. So we're going to see some jockeying for position here. The knight's moving back and forth, white trying to kick out black's knights. Both sides just making incremental progress. And so right here, Radjabov misses an opportunity. What would you play? There's an interesting idea, which is that you can give this check here. The idea is we're giving up this knight, but we're trying to open things up, and it goes down a long line. So white could take it. Now we would take back, attacking the rook. Rook goes to h3 to defend their pawn. And the whole point of this combination is that h5 now traps white's knight on g4. It doesn't have any squares to go to. So now we'll win the knight back. Then we can trade off the knights here. This is our end position where black has a slight advantage because white's pawns are easier to target. In the game, though, instead of that cool knight f4 move, black chooses to just play b5. So that was a missed chance for Radjabov. A couple more improving moves until Firouzja finally decides to make something happen. Firouzja is able to open up the A file and then push in the center, but even after making these two accomplishments, it's still not clear how much better he even is. That being said, it does seem like Firouzja has managed to outplay Radjabov at least a bit, and we'll continue to see that some more. Again, both sides kind of bringing the pieces around. Finally, some trades in the center to open things up a bit. And the rooks are traded off. A little bit more moving back and forth. And finally, let's talk about this resulting position. Basically, black has their pieces concentrated on the king side, but it's very difficult for black to really find an avenue of attack. Meanwhile, white has chances on the queen side due to black's weaknesses on c7 and b5, which do give white a slight advantage. Trying to convert that into a win, though, was no easy task. Black gains control of the A file, but can't make much out of it. While Firouzja, you're going to watch him go on quite the adventure with this knight. It came to a5, it's going all the way back to the other side of the board with f1. Radjabov's moving his knight around like crazy as well. A little bit back and forth some more again. Finally, though, Firouzja has made progress, gets this knight to e3, then is able to trade off the knights. The reason this knight trade is so good for white, well, you could see just how much Firouzja was struggling to find any sort of decent square for that knight. And we'll also see in a little bit right here, white pushes forward with g4, weakening the f4 square. Without a knight on the board, Radjabov can't really take advantage of this weak square. In the rook and queen endgame, again, Firouzja has more chances because the weakness is d6 is now weak. Firouzja brings the rook back. Queen e3 stops the queen from coming to f4. Radjabov decides to push d5. Could be weakening, though, after rook e2. But rook f7, playing actively, keeps that pawn accountable because you can't take here without losing f3. So instead, white just moves back and forth some more with king g2. Finally, at this point, can you find a clear plan for black? After moving back and forth for so many moves, Radjabov finally finds something active to do with the move king f6. Oh my goodness, we're going to see a king walk here. King walk, the f3 pawn is hanging, the king's coming to h4. But white finds the only way to defend this position. Good move by Firouzja. Rook e1 opens up the queen to defend this pawn, and now you can meet king h4, which is threatening to go queen g3 check, but it can be repelled by rook h1, so Radjabov's king walk only ends the game in a draw. With the first game of the second half in the books, here are our standings. Nepomniachtchi on a massive 6 points out of 8. Fabi now a full point behind after losing today. He has 5 points. Nakamura up to 4.5. Rapport up to 4 points. While Ding has 3.5. Duda, Radjabov, and Firouzja are on 3 points. Tomorrow is an unbelievably huge game. Caruana has white against Nepomniachtchi. This is a huge game for the standings. If Caruana wins this one, he catches Nepo tied for first. If they draw, Nepo keeps his lead. And if Nepo wins, well, he's just becoming unstoppable at that point, it seems like. Let me know in the comments what you think is going to happen in our clash. Fabi has white against Nepo. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe.